Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in what is it?
Area 51?
Area 51.
The former president also making headlines for his recent comments regarding aliens.
Debate has been settled. Aliens are real.
Former president got some attention when he proclaimed that aliens are real.
Well, he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that.
So aliens are real?
Well, I don't know if they're real or not. I can tell you he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that.
In February 2026, former President Obama appeared on Brian Tyler Cohen's podcast and casually said, aliens are real. Within 72 hours, sitting President Trump posted on Truth Social ordering the Pentagon to release classified files on extraterrestrial life. 3 weeks after that, the White House quietly registered two new government domains, alien.gov and aliens.gov. When journalists asked what these websites were for, the official White House response was two words: stay tuned. Now, either something enormous is about to happen, or we're all being played. To understand why this is happening right now, you need to understand how we got here. For most of the 20th century, if you talk seriously about UFOs, you were a conspiracy theorist. You were the person with the wall covered in string and newspaper clippings. The government's official position was simple: there's nothing to see here. That started cracking in 2017 when the New York Times published an investigation revealing that the US government had been secretly running a UFO research program called AATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. It had been funded for years, quietly, by the late Senator Harry Reid. Then, in 2021, the US military stopped calling them UFOs. It was rebranded as UAPs, Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena. This sounds like a minor name change, but it wasn't. It was the government signaling that these things were being taken seriously at an institutional level. In September 2025, the US Oversight Committee held a formal hearing, under oath, on camera, in front of the Congress, where active and former military personnel described encounters with objects that, in their words, could not be explained by any known technology.
The incursions began on October 14, 2003. Boeing contractors reported a massive glowing red square silently hovering over two missile defense sites. Security guards at a critical launch site reported a bright, fast-moving object over the ocean. Chaos ensued over the radio as the object approached rapidly. I heard my friends screaming, "It's coming right at us, it's coming right for us, and now it's right here."
A Navy senior chief described an object hovering over a US warship that showed no propulsion, no heat signature, and no flight characteristics matching anything in any military database. That was a sworn congressional testimony. Then came alien.gov. The White House quietly registered both alien.gov and aliens.gov on March 17, 2026. The sites are currently blank, nobody in the administration has explained what they're for, and that's where we are right now. So why is this actually happening? Because aliens are real is probably the least likely explanation for why the government is suddenly talking about them. There are at least 4 more plausible reasons, and they're all happening at the same time. The technology got better. The US military's own explanation for the spike in UAP sightings is almost disappointingly mundane. For most of aviation history, military pilots who saw something weird in the sky didn't report it, because doing so would be the end of their careers. Nobody wants to be the fighter pilot who told his commanding officer he saw a flying saucer. You'd be grounded and reassigned before the week was out. Then in 2019, the US Navy officially changed its policy. Pilots were now required to report unexplained aerial phenomena without the fear of professional consequences. Overnight, reports skyrocketed. At the same time, modern radar systems are dramatically more sensitive than they were even 10 years ago. Drones, weather balloons, classified foreign aircraft, things that would have been invisible to the 1990s or 2000s radars are now being picked up constantly. So the volume of sightings went up. Not because more unknown aircrafts are appearing, but because we can finally detect things that we always couldn't. And the people seeing them can finally speak about it. The Pentagon's own office, the AARO, All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, released a report stating it found no verifiable evidence of extraterrestrial beings or technology in any of the incidents it investigated. That report got far less coverage than the alien.gov domain. Reason number 2, it may not be aliens, but it might be China. Now this version probably scares the US military more. Some of the crafts being reported near US military bases and aircraft carriers show flight characteristics that shouldn't be possible with the current publicly known technology. They move without any apparent propulsion, they change directions at speeds that would kill a human pilot, and they appear and disappear from radar without explanation. Now, one explanation is obviously aliens. Another explanation is that China or Russia has made a classified technological leap that the US doesn't know anything about. And if you're a US military commander, that second option is far more terrifying, because it means an adversary nation has potentially cracked some sort of propulsion physics and has been flying it near your most sensitive military assets, watching, recording, testing your response times. Several military analysts and congressional members have stated publicly that the UAP hearings are partly a way to force the Pentagon to take this threat seriously, regardless of its origin. Whether it's aliens or China, the answer is the same. The US doesn't know what it is, and that's a problem. Reason number 3, the distraction theory. Now, to me, this seems like the most plausible reason, because the timing is very, very convenient. When Trump signed the directive to release UFO files in February 2026, the story that was dominating every news cycle was the Jeffrey Epstein client list. Journalists were pushing hard for those names, Congress was under pressure. It was a story that everyone in Washington desperately wanted to go away. And then overnight, it kinda sorta did. Now, almost any logical person was immediately pointing this out publicly. Whether the timing was intentional or coincidental, the effect was the same, a complete news cycle reset. This is not a new trick. Governments have been using high-attention spectacle stories to drown out uncomfortable ones for as long as governments have existed. Sometimes it's a war, sometimes it's a wedding, apparently sometimes it's aliens. And this time, it was both. It was the war and it was the aliens. Reason number 4 is the one thing that both parties agree on. Here's a fact. In the United States in 2026, there are almost zero issues that both Republicans and the Democrats agree on. They disagree on taxes, immigration, climate, healthcare, foreign policy, basically everything. But UFO disclosure? Both sides are pushing for it, and Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer, one of Trump's most vocal opponents, praised the move and said he'd been trying to pass the UFO disclosure legislature for years. Think about what that means politically. This is an issue that generates enormous public interest, makes politicians look brave and truth-telling, costs essentially nothing to promise, and creates no actual policy conflict between the parties. The UFO files releasing is the perfect political stunt. It satisfies everyone, risks nothing, and if the files turn out to be boring, you can just say the real stuff is still classified. So here's where we are. The files are coming. Trump has promised them, the Congress is expecting them, and the whole world is watching. And experts who have studied this for decades, including journalists and researchers at major universities, are quietly saying don't expect anything groundbreaking, and I think we all already knew that. The most likely outcome is a massive release of heavily redacted military documents, bureaucratic incident reports, and radar data that proves exactly what the Pentagon has been saying all along. We saw things we couldn't explain, we investigated, and we don't know what they were, and we found no evidence of extraterrestrial life. The alien.gov website is still blank as of today. No announcement has been made, the files haven't dropped, but does that mean that there's nothing there? Not necessarily. There are legitimate unanswered questions. There are things on radar that haven't been explained. There are military personnel who describe things under oath that have never been debunked. But there's a big difference between we don't know what this is and it's aliens. And the government has been very, very good at letting the public fill the gaps in themselves. Now, in between the failing war and the Epstein files, I'm not sure how much importance is going to be given to these files or if they're going to release them soon. But if they do, I'm sure it's going to be a nothing burger. It's just going to be a bunch of redacted files just like we saw in the Epstein case. And I doubt there's going to be any evidence of anything extraterrestrial, but we can only hope. Fingers crossed, we actually get something interesting.